New recording location. Something feels a little off, though. Ah, I know what's off, and it's way over there. Give me a minute. So, while I do this, while I see how far my cord goes, which is that far. Yeah. There we are. Now the only thing that's left is to get a zipper for it. And a setup where I can, go back a bit more from the camera and actually show this off. So, new place, fresh start, same overall idea. Of course, then I go off and I freaking get four things done up to go ahead and need to record. Regardless, though, let us begin. This one's probably going to be pretty short because, for incredibly obvious reasons, not the least of which being, I can't seem to find a proper spot for my webcam. But no, the real reason is very simple. Simple as I move over to try and center myself more. The real reason is very simple. Final Fantasy 1. What the hell do I even say about Final Fantasy 1 that hasn't been said by 4 billion people, right? Now, granted, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but Final Fantasy 1 is, I said this on stream, I feel stupid saying this because Final Fantasy 1 is the most popular story aside from, of course, the ET landfill. Everybody knows the supposed story of the ET landfill, right? Atari dumped a bunch of their cartridges in a landfill because ET helped contribute to the video game crash of 83. Now, I say helped contribute because, yeah, if you know anything about economics, you know that you know that ET, a single Atari game, was not going to do it. But it was a combination. I almost want to revive the Kefka joke from that, but I don't even know if you can hear that. And motorcycles don't go that often. Anyways, sorry, tangents. What really caused the crash of '83 was oversaturation of the market. Well, one thing that wasn't oversaturated was RPGs back in the day because, well, RPGs weren't exactly a thing, not as widespread as you might think. D&D was still, well, I don't want to say it was in its infancy, but it was definitely young at that point, right? Because, D&D had been a game that had been around, but it was going through its growing patches. Video games at the time FF1 was being made, were also mostly in their infancy of their second kick at the can, really. Because, well, this was, of course, the NES era. Everybody knows the story of how FF1 came to be. Square was making crap game after crap game after crap game. The team was getting sick of developing games, so they wanted to go out with one. Well, okay, no, sorry, let me rewind. Hironobu Sakaguchi was kind of thinking of bowing out of game development, but he really wanted to make one type of game, which was an RPG, and he wanted that to be a swan song. Hence why he titled it Final Fantasy, because it was meant to be the final, the final fantasy themed thing he would work on, right? Then it exploded. FF1 became so popular both in Japan and in the West that, well, we have a franchise that's coming out with its 16th numbered entry at this point, with a ridiculous amount of spin-offs. But the funny thing is I'm not even really talking about the original, am I? I'm of course talking about the Pixel Remaster. One thing I will say about the Pixel Remaster is the Pixel Remaster is interesting in that we are finally getting a definitive way to play these classic games. Now, granted, a lot of the extras from the re-releases are not included. This is, for all intents and purposes, an upscaled version, a remaster of the original titles. So this is effectively what you're getting is effectively the Super Mario All-Stars treatment. 16-bit versions of the NES games with the 16-bit versions, in there already. With no tweaks, no enhancements, no bonus dungeons, no bonus jobs in the case of FF5, so on and so forth. Now, how you feel about that is entirely up to you. But honestly, I kind of like that idea because if you want to experience how these games originally were, this is the best way to do so. They, of course, remix the music, which I kind of wish they had allowed us to play the original music, or at the very least picked a version, right? So we could listen, for example, let us listen to the NES renditions, maybe go up to the the PS1 versions, the PSP versions, the GBA versions. Give us options, As I honestly think celebrating the music of the franchise is also another good idea. I do think the Pixel remasters are worth the purchase. I do. But I do wish they would just bring them to consoles already because it's really dumb that they haven't brought it to consoles. Now, the lack of porting is not something I gave a negative for because I refuse to give a negative for that. At the very least, for FF1, I refuse to give a negative for that. There are, I would argue, 4 of the classic Final Fantasies that I would actually consider giving a port, a lack of port negative to. Who, right? FF1 definitely isn't. It isn't. FF4 definitely isn't. And 4 that I would consider. Yeah, 1 and 4 are really the only 2 I would not consider giving that for. With FF1, we of course have the original NES, the PS1 version Origins, which I don't like very much, but I'd have to replay it to see if I actually was right. Because there is one thing we'll talk about that I'll talk about it a bit later when we start talking about the actual game. That, yeah, that I'm pretty sure the PS1 version actually didn't fix. Some people say they fixed it, and I don't know what version they were playing because the version I played didn't have it fixed. Anyways. But anyways, so So the NES, the PS1, the GBA, the PSP, and then finally the original, the original iOS S release. And then finally the Pixel Remaster. So NES, PS1, PSP, GBA, and then phone, Pixel Remaster. 6 times FF1 has been released. If you're wondering why 4 is in that category, SNES, PS1, GBA, the 3D remake on the 3DS, or on the DS, sorry. Why do I keep screwing that up? 3D remake on the DS, phone version of the 3D version, PSP version of the 2D version, Steam port of the 3D version, Pixel Remaster. 8 ports. That's insane. Now, why would I give it to the other? Give a negative to the lack of ports for the others? Just FF2. Not, and obviously I'm talking Western release, by the way. PS1, GBA, PSP, Pixel Remaster. That's it. FF5 or FF3, I should say, it gets it even worse. It actually has it the worst, so I'm actually going to hold off on that. FF5, PS1, GBA, the phone version, the Steam port of the phone version, the Pixel Remaster. And then there's FF6. SNES, PS1, and GBA, phone, Pixel Remaster, and Steam. Irony, right? Now you might say, well, that's plenty of ports. Yeah, but again, the see the problem with it is FF1 is so easy to port and so easy to get right because there's very little to screw up on. And on top of that, it's questionable whether or not to really count the original phone version and the original Steam port of the phone version for both 5 and 6. So if you take those away, since those have been discontinued, that leaves you with 4 for FF6, and if we don't count those, FF5 has PS1, GBA, and the Pixel Remaster, and that's it. Then you've got the problem of 3, which literally had the DS remake, the PSP and phone ports of the DS remake, and then the Pixel Remaster of the original. Notice the trend? As my phone goes off. And I quickly check because I have forgotten to. Is that the thing telling me that loan company has taken their payment? Let's check, because it looks like it is. It is indeed the loan company taking their payment. Good. Good. That means I am square for that for today. For this week. Sorry about that. Let me turn off my phone here. As I activate another thing, which needs to go away. Oh my god. No, I did not say. I did not say continue to piss me off. I said go away. Sorry. Anyways, where was I? Right, ports. FF2, like I said, only has PS1, GBA, PSP, and then the Pixel Remaster. then the 4, which includes 3 of the frickin' 3D versions for FF3. Like I said, DS, PSP, Steam port of the 3D version, Pixel Remaster, right? And then 6, like I said, if we remove the other 2, are like SNES, PS1, GBA, and the Pixel Remaster. Square has a bad track record of porting the Final Fantasies, is what I mean. As I've sat here wasting way too much time. Might have to do some editing on that. But, which is funny because that's actually skipping down to my 6th note on my page here. Because, as you might expect with FF1, I only have like half a page of notes. Which is, I mean, that makes sense, right? It's FF1. How much is there to really talk about with FF1? I'm not going to cover stuff that is in the Ultimania, which I actually have down here as I reach down and grab it. I do recommend this, by the way. This is the Final Fantasy Ultimania. This is Volume 1, which covers FFs 1 through 6, which is fitting for my purposes because I will be doing videos on most of the 1 through 6. But this is a great guide. I do recommend it. There's a lot of good artwork in here. There are some really, really cool things. He's battling the Kraken, battling the Dragon, battling Oshu, stuff like that. That talk of all of the different ports that have come to, that Final Fantasy has had over the years. There's, the original Famicom version, the original version, the Wonder Swan version, all of that stuff. There is a lot of different ports that they have done. The reason I'm not counting all of the ports that are listed in the Ultimania is, well, not a lot of them came out outside of Japan for one thing, and for the other thing is some of the machines it came out on weren't even over here. And besides, I count the phone versions as, one distinct version. Regardless, though, the Pixel remasters were a good idea. Now let's talk about the game proper. Everybody knows about the D&D influence. You've got your basic classes, warrior, mage, which was actually split into 2 distinct classifications, black and white mages, respectively, for attack and healing. And, it's pretty self-explanatory. You had thieves for stealing, healing stuff, which, funny enough, actually is the first time thieves were ever introduced into the series. And, it was the first time thieves were ever introduced to the series. Right? Because thieves were, for all intents and purposes, kind of the... How do I put this? Thieves became ninjas once you go to... spoilers, once you go see Bahamut, who's an NPC in this game, and you present him the rat's tail, and you change classes, right? So there's that. I do like the classes for the most part. And I do like that you can customize your party. Oh, Red Mage was also another thing. A lot of people shit on the Red Mage class, and there is some good reason for it. I admit I'm kind of neutral the red mage more so. I do think the red mage is actually useful as long as you supplement it with with a more dedicated mage. You know, some people swear by a warrior thief white mage black mage party. I kind of swear behind a warrior red mage white mage black mage team. I never really bothered with the NES version so much, so I don't know how viable it is in the original. But then again, I would rather pull my own teeth out than play the NES version ever again, so there's that. I'll talk about that more when we talk about the story, what brief talk we do about the story. Let's talk about some of the quality of life features before we get into the core elements of the thing. First of all, I love the autosave on the Pixel remasters. Great stuff. Really enjoy it. Excellent stuff. The maps are also extremely awesome. The world map is great. This is true across all of them, by the way, from what I can tell. So you have your map, right? So you have your world map. The world map shows you the world, and each location that's listed on a list of locations is all the places you've been, so that it doesn't spoil the names of any towns. That's a good touch. That is a nice touch. So, it gives you the list of towns you've been in. But one thing that's good is it'll actually tell you how many treasure chests / hidden items or items that you acquire outside of chests. As in the case of FF1, you still have to obtain. So, for example, I forget the name of the cave, but the cave where you can get Excalibur, it'll tell you whether or not you've actually gone to go get Excalibur, because it'll tell you, 0 of 1 item, right? And then, however many chests are in that area, right? It's a great feature, and I love it. Absolutely adore it, and I stand behind that. It's actually one of the reasons why I gave a double plus. As for the maps in general, one for the dungeons and one for the world map. Because the world map, so the world map has to use dungeon maps. This is a nice touch. In FF1, and obviously you have your dungeon floor, and then you have rooms within the dungeon floor. So what the what the dungeon map in FF1 will do is when you go into a dungeon, into a room in the dungeon on the dungeon floor, and you go into your map, it'll show you what's in all of the rooms, right? So it'll show you, okay, there's a chest over here you haven't opened. These chests over here you have opened. This chest over here you haven't opened. This chest down here you haven't opened, and so on and so forth. It's very handy. And if you're in the main area in the room and not into one of the smaller rooms, it will actually show you on the map which doors you've opened already. So if you've explored, half them, you're like, you kind of get a little sidetracked, and you're like, oh crap, did I get all those? Did I get the the top part of the floor's rooms? Well, you can just hit the X button. You can just hit the X button on your controller and bring up the map. I don't remember the keyboard control very much off the top of my head. Please forgive me. You can hit the X button on a Xbox controller, or square button on your PlayStation controller, or or the Y button on a Joy-Con controller if you manage to get your Joy-Cons hooked up to your PC. I've heard that it's possible. I haven't gotten to do it. Not that I've bothered, because my luck with Joy-Cons is, how shall I put this delicately? Shit on a stick. I honestly think these are the worst controllers Nintendo has ever created. I'm sorry. Hurry, Lord, but it's true. They're built. They're built on hopes and tissue paper. They're built out of hopes and tissue paper, and are so fragile. It's fucking stupid. So many of them are prone to drift. It's fucking pathetic. Which is funny because you want to know how many different types of controllers I've actually experienced drift in? This is it. Two types of controllers that have ever drifted on me. Yeah. But bitching about controllers aside, hey, for the record, I really enjoy the Series X controller. I think it's really good, but then again, I like the Xbox controller in general. And there's several controllers I'm partial to. Anyways, I'm getting off track. My point is, which is also funny because the PS4 controller, I've only ever had one go drift on me. On Joy-Cons, I have had 3 drift on me now. Well, okay, 2 or 3, but I'm pretty sure the third one also drifted on me, but whatever. Anyways, sorry. Sidetracked. So the maps. So yeah, so you can just hit the map button and you can actually view which doors you've already opened. It's a beautiful feature and I love it. I love the flow. I love the flow of this game too. At no point did I ever feel like the game was dragging or spinning its wheels. I never felt like I was, oh, now I gotta go do this stupid thing, which makes no sense, or now I have to go over here, or oh, now I'm being diverted over here because this plot shit happened over here. Here, right? I like that because it always feels like I'm going to new places, and it always feels like something, I'm discovering new stuff. I never fully felt lost. Well, I mean, I did get lost, but that's more my sense of direction sucking rather than the game not actually failing to guide you. It is a big open world, you are meant to explore. But what's funny is that as the world kind of opens up in ways that actually help guide you in a specific direction, right? So, for example, there's only so much of the map you can walk over. There's only so many places along the world that you can land your ship at, which did get a little aggravating, I will admit. But I'm going to cut the game that was originally made in the '80s a little bit of slack on that front. Especially considering if you can land your ship anywhere, FF1 would be broken in half. It would be broken in half so hard that Bane would be looking at the. It would be looking at how broken FF1's back is and being like, Jesus! Jesus, dude, do you have no compassion? But I digress. Then there's. Then there's the fact that all of the NPCs are very useful in this game. Every NPC always has something interesting to say and usually will help guide you in a specific direction. This is a trend that continues into, that's in FF4, for example, and in FF5, for example, right? For example, when you get this one item, this one NPC will go and let you tell you to go talk to. I forget his name, but there's an NPC that one of the NPCs he says, "Oh, you should go talk to this other person that if you've been talking to everybody, you'll remember that they're in I forget the name of the town, and then you go to that town, talk to that NPC, and bada bing, bada boom, you're off you go, right?" I live in a siren-filled area now, so that's the drawback. Cheaper rent, but that's the drawback. Anyways. Anyways. But yeah, no, all of that is good stuff. One last bit of gameplay to talk about before we get into the nitty-gritty. Well, technically two, but they're related. I guess we'll start with the negative thing first. If you're going to play this game, I'm going to warn you right now. FF1 has a poison fetish. FF1 was effectively the originator and codifier of what I am calling the status ailment fetish. Effectively, this is a negative for whenever a game, usually an RPG, just has this nasty, will constantly throw a specific status effect at you. For example, FF4 and 5 are getting a status effect fetish negative because enemies are constantly throwing status effects. In this game, it's not really status effects in general, it's specifically poison, as the other status effects are like almost non-existent in this game. And even then, I was just looking at that going, okay, look. Sure, I'm not going to ding the game for not being able to land my ship my boat wherever the hell I want. But I'm drawing the line at the poison fetish thing because you made a goddamn choice with your poison fetish. And you chose poorly, game. Now let's talk about turn-based combat. Let me be as blunt as I can with this. If you're somebody who's, and I don't know why you'd be watching this video if you were, but if you're someone who thinks that turn-based combat is an obsolete game mechanic, there's the fucking door. Don't let it hit you on the way out because I don't want shit stains on my door. Thanks. Yeah. You see, okay. I do have to explain this. Turn-based combat is any game mechanic is not an obsolete game mechanic unless it is actively been unless it is actively something you would never you can look at and be like, well, why the hell would we ever put that in our game? Right? Now, I know that for some people that is turn-based combat, but that's so stupid. There are so many games that are coming out and proving that turn-based combat is not stale, it is not dull, it is not boring. You know, is the typical Mario platformer a stale game mechanic? Is Mega Man a stale game mechanic? You know, the Mega Man formula. Is that a stale mechanic? Because I can tell you right now, no, they're not. There's so many interesting things you can do with a platformer. There's so many interesting things you can do with a Mega Man style jump and shoot kind of gameplay style. There's so many things you could do with the Zelda formula. And there's a fuck ton of interesting and unique things you can do with turn-based RPGs. This obsession with turning everything into an action RPG, into every RPG into an action game, is so stupid to me. And it just draws my ire every time I see somebody try to make the argument that a turn-based battle system is not something you should ever put in your game. Because that is a load of garbage. Which is funny because this is a lesson Square Enix has never fucking learned. Because every so often they're like, well, we're desperate for money, so let's throw out this turn-based game of some variety, whether it be a pixel remaster or say Bravely Default, and oh, it sells well because people want turn-based RPGs. Gee, I wonder why that is. I know, I know, I know. Oh, it, it is it's one of those things where I love turn-based combat, but that's because you can do some interesting and unique things with it. I do think that an option to, if you're going to have random encounters, giving me an option to turn them off, for to adjust how often or how often or how many or how few I get into in a given area is something that should be in everything. Thanks for that, Bravely Default. Because you the developer choosing an encounter rate, that has so many chances to backfire, it's pathetic. But put it in the player's hands, suddenly you've got something. By the way, if I were to design an RPG, you bet your ass it would have turn-based battles, and you bet your ass it would have a freaking encounter slider. Okay, I just want to get on with the story. Encounters off. All right, I would like to level now. Counters on. You'd still have to, design those encounters for those that want to fight them, but giving the player the option to turn them off, that's a good thing in my opinion. I would also kind of design my bosses with a scaled down mechanic, but that's just me. In other words, if you're under leveled, you can choose to play it in scale mode, which means the boss comes down to your level. But anyways, so I talked about turn-based battles. I've talked about the helpful NPCs. I've talked about that. Let's do a segue. So we're going to be getting into spoilers. What little spoilers there are for FF1, and in a bit here. But I want to talk briefly about this. So this is your big spoiler warning. We're going to talk about the sense of adventure. FF1 has a very distinct sense of adventure because last chance for spoilers. Within 20 minutes of booting up the game, we have already saved Princess Sarah, or of Cordelia Castle. Back in the 80s, most host adventures, especially in video games, boiled down to one simple thing: save the princess. Princess is locked up in a castle. Go save her. Your princess is in another castle. And if you look close at my sprite, I'm double flipping you off, right? I'm sorry. Now that I see that, I can't unsee that. I can't unsee Toad giving you the double bird in 8-bit Mario 1. And so we go and we defeat Garland. So there's not much to really talk about. This is just a restore the crystals, restore balance to the elements kind of storyline, right? Stop the evil that's plaguing the world, restore balance. Well, you're all good, right? Then, but then of course Final Fantasy has to get complicated. See, it turns out when we beat Garland, Garland's body was sent back in time about 2,000 years, and so now, the fiends of the past have to send Garland into the 2,000 years into the future, and oh my god, my head hurts. Effectively, it's a time loop. Now, many have described this as supposed to be a simple one go through time loop, right? The problem is during the ending, Garland is there. There. And yes, I do know about the twist with Garland in Stranger of Paradise. Yes, I am open to playing Stranger of Paradise. But if you ask me to stream City NT, I might just give you the freaking banhammer. Anyways, the thing about the thing about Garland in the original is Garland is also supposed to be chaos, which just makes the whole twist with Stranger of Paradise even weirder, in my opinion. But see, my biggest problem with FF1 was I feel like a little blurb that says that the crystals restored Garland would have been a better idea. You know, give us this reasoning that he was a good person and the crystals restored him. You know, but no, he's just there in the ending and whatever, I guess. For me, I know some people don't like the ending and even find it detracts from the game because because it's all a dream, even though there's no evidence to suggest that the four heroes don't remember it because you are supposed to be the people the players are supposed to be the ones, the warriors of light, right? Honestly, I've always had the headcanon that the warriors of light always remembered their time, even if subconsciously. Where's my evidence for that? Weirdly enough, to City NT, where the characters actually pop back up and they actually remember the events of Duodecim, of the original Dissidia and Duodecim, right? Right? Granted, that's one of the few things I actually enjoyed about NT's story. Otherwise, it's a redundant pile of vomit, but whatever. I don't mind breaking the time loop and having Garland restored because I like a happy ending. And in my opinion, yeah, the crystals do have that kind of power. They do. Who? I mean, if the fiends can have time travel as one of their powers, the crystals can have resurrection as one of their powers, right? The crystals taking pity on one person who got screwed over by time travel shenanigans and dark beings. I could see that. But then again, I also subscribe to the idea. Then again, I also just subscribe to the idea that we need less dickish deities in our setting, in our fiction. You know. And that's it. That's FF1, ladies and gentlemen. FF1 is very interesting and was an interesting stopgap for me in between streaming the juggernaut that was as Fire Emblem Three Houses and the juggernaut we'll be talking about next time, which is, of course, Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes. Hopes, which I don't have in front of me because why would I have? Because why would I have visual aids in front of me? Regardless, I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts. It's on this much talked about game. And I will see you next time for my rumination style video on Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which, oh boy, that's going to be a doozy and a half of a video, isn't it? Till next time, Blue Wolf House of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one.